So this has absolutely nothing to do with the sermon and everything to do with the sermon. So our middle school kiddos, I need you to listen real carefully to me. I remember the older kids from when I was a little. I remember their names. I know where they live today. I know who they are. It seems like a little thing that you do to help them ring the bell. It is not a little thing. It is not a little thing. It has everything to do with this sermon because you have a young woman named Mary who has this older person in her life who she goes to in the moment when she doesn't know where else to turn. We need each other. Lord of mercy, to watch them help those littles ring that bell nearly did me in. And to watch the littles, when you look at when you look at their face and they look up to that bigger one, that right there, I write in my newsletter article this week about finding Emmanuel. Well, right there, full display. Seeing the look on Karina's face when she reached up for Margaret to pick her up. Lord of mercy. God with us, revealed in us. I don't really need to say anything. And you're thinking, oh, she goes, shut up and sit down. No, I wrote it. Is that me? Do I just need to stay here? Okay. Now what I really wrote. There's a quote by Pablo Picasso that says, art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life. Each week during Advent, we have a piece of art to help us wash off the dust of our everyday life. Like Justin and Shannon said, the dust of shopping and busyness and packing and baking, and so that we can see through all the dust the beauty of Christmas. Last week we had the cinematic arts, the arts of the great artist Lucille Ball, who helped us laugh and dance and sing. And with the tune all week in my head of, we need a little Christmas right this very minute. This week is a different kind of art. This week it's over 700-year-old art. It's also on the cover of your news bulletin. This image is a fresco that is found on the wall of a family chapel in Italy. So think if this was painted on one piece of the wall in the chapel downstairs. One of several images of the life of Jesus. I absolutely love this image. I fell in love with it years ago. And full disclosure, this is not the first time I've preached using this image. Just so we're all on the same page, Elizabeth is in the gold maternity dress. They're all in maternity. I don't know why, but they're all in maternity clothes. Mary is in the red. I point that out to you because Mary tends to be in blue and she's in red here, and that's a sermon for a different day. Whenever I read this story or I see this image, and I can barely hear the story without seeing the image in my mind's eye, whether it's in front of me or not, but there's this school of thought around people who are generally well thought of biblical scholars. And they tell the story this way, that Mary runs with haste to Elizabeth's house because Mary is so excited to share this good news of her pregnancy with Elizabeth. and to share this excitement that they're pregnant at the same time. And isn't that wonderful? Well, I have to respectfully disagree. And when I hear that narrative told that way, I always think, bless their heart. Those fine folks didn't know very many pregnant, unwed teenage moms, and they certainly didn't know any of the ones that I've ever known who found themselves scared, anxious, confused, uncertain about what the future was going to bring. Even in the midst of the hopefulness and the excitement, I am convinced that in situations like this, joy does indeed come in the morning, but not in the moment. That gets reflected. I think this artist understood that. You'll see, and it's easier to see in the bigger print than it is on your small. You can go home and look it up. It's easy to find online. Mary and her companions standing behind her do not have a look on their face of great joy and excitement. They look a little weary, actually. The one in the back that kind of fades into the blue, she's looking at the other like, I don't know. And then you have Elizabeth and her companion standing behind her, and Elizabeth is bending down to look at Mary right in the eyes and to wrap her arms around her. And what you maybe can't see is that Elizabeth and her companion have this slightest hint of a smile on their face, as if it's a reassuring look that almost says, it's all right, little one. It's going to be okay. There's a mixed bag of emotions here. And personally, I think Mary caught the express train to Elizabeth's house because she needed to be in a place where she could be safe, where she could feel whatever it was that she needed to feel, a place where she could be scared and uncertain, a place where she wouldn't have to be alone, and she needed a place of support and wisdom and maybe a word of encouragement. As the story tells, or as best we can understand it, these two women, both pregnant, are in very different situations. Elizabeth, it says, is of a very different generation than Mary, past her childbearing years. So I always imagine that Elizabeth is about to be a new mom while all of her girlfriends are getting ready to be grandmas. And so perhaps she's able to navigate this unexpected circumstance a little bit better than Mary because she has decades of life experience from which to draw to help her navigate this unexpected and uncertain situation. And I can't help but think that Mary perhaps knows there is a wise word or at least a non-judgmental embrace if she can only get to Elizabeth. Now, maybe you've never been an unwed teenage mom. Maybe you've never been a sister to an unwed pregnant teenage mom. But probably most of us, it's safe to assume, have been in a place where news comes to us that totally upends the future story that we have laid out for ourselves and for our family. And we aren't sure what we're supposed to do next. We aren't certain what the future is going to hold. We aren't certain of anything. We just need to find ourselves in a safe place where someone might give us the slightest hint of an encouraging smile and the slightest bit of a hug. Where is that for you? Where is that safe house of healing and wholeness, your place where you know that no matter what, even when it's not going to be okay, you know it's going to be okay if only you can get to Elizabeth, where there's no judgment. You know, when Mary gets to Elizabeth's house and Elizabeth hears her greeting and she shows up on her doorstep, Elizabeth, the first words out of Elizabeth's mouth, God has blessed you above all women and blessed the child that you carry. Nothing but encouragement. Not one question of doubt. Not one question at all. It is as if we like to say around here, she wraps Mary up and says, no matter what's going on, dear one, you are beloved of God. You are beloved of God. When I feel certain there were plenty of other well-meaning church people who looked down their long, self-righteous nose at Mary with plenty of stones to throw and condemnation to be had, but not Elizabeth. Elizabeth just wraps her up in her big old maternity gown full of hope and encouragement and a slight smile and a big hug. And the words that you don't hear, the words that we'll hear next week, are in the verses immediately following what Elizabeth says. Mary gets to Elizabeth, and Elizabeth gives her these words of hope. And then in the very next verse, Mary sings her beautiful song of praise and thanksgiving that we know as the Magnificat. Now, oftentimes, I think church folks and preachers alike get it a little mixed up. Oftentimes we like to read the story or preach the story that the angel comes to Mary, says she's pregnant, she's going to have a baby, and then Mary sings this song of joy. And that's not the way Luke writes it at all. And thank God, because that ain't the way it generally happens in real life. Only after she comes with haste to Elizabeth, and Elizabeth speaks these words of encouragement to her, can Mary sing her song of hope and joy and thanksgiving. And I don't think that's a coincidence, my friends. Sounds like they both knew the title of this sermon series, We Need Each Other, to be true for them in their lives. Even when you can't fix it. Even when you can't make it better. Which is really hard for me because I can be pretty good at fixing things and making them better. And I really like to do that. And you know what? This week I couldn't do that. This week this couple came on Tuesday. I know it was Tuesday because we were in staff meeting when they first came to the door. And Levon says to them, as he does so well, so often, he says, how can I help you all? Well, we just need to talk to the pastor. And he says, well, how can I help you all? You know, we tend to cut to the chase. If you need a bus pass, we can give you a bus pass. Just get to it. Well, we just need to talk to the pastor. Well, we were in staff meeting, and so Levon says, can you give us a little bit? And one of them will be down. And sure enough, they did. And I went down, and he was very strung out. Pretty jittery, and a story that didn't make much sense, and she just mostly sat there scared and weary looking. And I'm not proud to tell you this, but this is what happened. I stood there and I thought, what do you want? I didn't say it out loud. I kindly said in my best pastoral way, how can I help you? But in my head, I thought, get to it, I have a sermon to finish. to carry on and on and on with a story that didn't make much sense, and I listened. And so he gets done and he says, well, I suppose that's all. And I waited. And he looks up at me and he says, may I use your restroom? Sure. So I looked at her and I thought, well, maybe she's the ask. Nothing. So I went into the office and went into the cabinet and pulled out one of those Will Be Fed bags that we created 1,000 of down in Centennial Hall about 8 weeks ago. And I pulled one out and took it to her and handed it to the young woman. And she looked at me with this expression of maybe like Mary's friend behind, like, I'm not sure about all this. And she thanked me about 14 times. And he came back. And I said, you sure there's nothing I can do? No, ma'am. My brother is coming from Wichita. And I thought, well, earlier you said it was Topeka, but neither here nor there. Can we just wait right here until he comes? Yeah, you can wait right here. You sure you don't need anything? No, ma'am. I went back to my office, finished the sermon. When we are at our best, both individual we and collective we are better than that little whatever that was in my head of get to the point, what do you want? When we are at our best, church, we are Elizabeth. Just opening up our arms to greet whomever comes through the door as if it were the Christ child. Elizabeth is my inspiration this week, the same way that Lucille Ball was last week. Lucille making me dance and sing and laugh and be mildly ridiculous, and Elizabeth this week just wanting to open up my arms as if every single person is bringing the Christ child to our door. To be a church full of Elizabeths where people can come and know they can just show up and bring whatever stuff is going on, because it doesn't matter that it's Christmas, there's always stuff going on. An unexpected hospital stay. Dog dies and it seems like a silly thing. It's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing when your dog dies. It happened at Christmas. Any number of things. You can show up and somebody might greet you with a word of hope, but they might just think better and just keep their mouth shut and give you a little smile and a big hug. So yes, I want us this season to be Elizabeths to one another. But I also want us to be Marys. Elizabeth gets to be Elizabeth because Mary brings all of her stuff. And you hear me say regularly, some of you sometimes will start to cry in church and then you'll say, oh, I'm sorry I cried. And I always fuss at you. Because if you can't cry here, if you can't feel what you're feeling here, especially at this time of the year, then where else can you do it? And shame on us when we expect you to do otherwise. To just show up and be merry with that uncertain look on your face. And you don't have to put a little mask on or put on a happy face to show up. The only way we get to be Elizabeth is if Mary shows up too. And some days, Mary's what we need to be. teaches us during this Christmas season that Christmas comes to our doorsteps in lots of unusual and unconventional ways. And just like last week with Joseph and his crazy dream that realists like me don't like to take seriously. And now, Mary and Elizabeth, when we live into God's calling for us to make real and embody the Christmas story in the world, remember, Emmanuel, God with us, revealed in us. When you show up and live into your Elizabeth story, or into your Mary story, or into Joseph's crazy dream story, you are for sure to be the lead story in somebody's coffee shop gossip. And that, my friends, is why we need each other. We need to share our difficult and painful and scary stuff, and we need to know that there are places and people, perhaps a whole tribe of mamas in maternity dresses, who will wrap you up in their goodness and their love and their hope and their compassion so that you can sing, your song of thanksgiving and praise. And when we do that, my friends, when we allow God to work through us, when we allow Emmanuel to be revealed in us, whether it's Elizabeth or Mary or Joseph, when we allow that, then that's Christmas. That's Christmas. So let Christmas come. Let Christmas come in you and me as the Christ child comes to our doorstep. Let Christmas come. May it be so. Amen.